My name is Lily McCovey, and I will be doing my presentation on the agenda setting effect theory. So, the agenda setting effect held much history, especially from the 1960s to the 1980s. However, no effect is as prevalent in today's society as the agenda setting effect. The agenda setting effect in the Fundamentals of Media Effects by the authors Jennings Bryant and Bruce Finkley is described as one that explains how news media can tell us what to think about, how to think about it, and how to associate news items. The theory grew roots in 1922 and began to flourish as media grew. Slowly but surely, the effect of agenda setting in the media began to be noticed and gain traction as media just began to grow and evolved through 4 different stages. The effect of media, the agenda setting effect, can be seen both positively and negative depending on really who you are and the bias that you hold as an individual. The theory first began to emerge in 1922 when Walt Lippmann argued that the press shapes the public's perception of the world. In his book Public Opinion, he explains how the mass media sets an agenda that influences the opinions of the public and creates a pseudo-environment. This term later sets the stage and directly leads to the term agenda setting effect that we now see. Then in 1963, Bernard Cohen's study gave the effect its name in his book In the Press and Foreign Policy. For years, the agenda setting theory of media was summarized by Bernard by this phrase that is the press may not be successful much of the time in telling people what to think, but it is stunningly successful in telling its readers what to think about. Essentially, the effect underwent 4 stages of development. The first stage was through the Maxwell McCombs and Donald Shaw Chapel Hill study in 1972. The two tested the difference between public agenda and the media agenda using content analysis and survey research. In Glenn Sparks' book, Media Effects Research, he explains how during the study they found that foreign policy, law and order, fiscal policy, public welfare, and civil rights were 5 issues that were most prominently covered in the press. Then when they asked the public opinion, there was a direct convergence with the issues covered in the press as well as the issues that they reiterated then back to the people doing the study. So the agenda setting effect was really first identified and seen in effect. Second phase of the agenda setting effect took place during the elections of 1976. Shaw and McCombs again interviewed a panel of voters in Charlotte, North Carolina, in hopes to replicate their findings. In his book, Explorers and Surveyors, he explained that the study pinpointed 3 things: the psychological need for an individual's orientation, the different roles of newspapers and television, and the fit of interpersonal communication in the mass communication process. According to McCombs and Shaw's book later, The Evolution of Agenda Setting Research, he explains that the emphasis was specifically on the need for orientation since it provided a psychological explanation to the effect. The third phase of the agenda setting effect was entered in 1976 during a study by Weaver, Graver, McCombs, and al. And this study focused on the 1976 presidential elections that found the effect was related to contingent factors such as occupations, educational levels, geographic locations, and the dynamics of voters' perceptions based on either priming or framing, all of which strengthened the effect and the idea that they really had in the effect. The 4th phase of agenda setting research was then finally entered in the 1980s and rephrased the question from who sets the public agenda to then who sets the news agenda, according to McCombs' book that he wrote in 1992. So overall, the agenda setting effect can be seen both positively and negatively. It really depends on who you are. We see with Generation Z, the generation that is unarguably the most affected by media. We grew up with phones, we grew up with media, we grew up learning and knowing already how to use technology, and it's become such a normal part of people's lives. And we see actually these movements begin happening, and we see this with Black Lives Matter, with the Me Too movement, and we see the effect that media has on us and the agenda setting of the media and the priming and framing that we see by the media, and then the priming that actually affects us, that we now go and pursue these things. So this can be seen either positively or negatively, but this is mostly a positive effect that we have. A negative effect can be seen with the polarization of politics nowadays. So overall, the opinion that you might have is up to you, but that's the agenda setting effect. Thank you.